Welcome in, gatekeepers. It is so good to see y'all. And it's so nice to be fitting right back in this comfy chair of visiting with everybody. Like we're sitting on the front porch, just having a conversation, maybe having, a hot cup of tea or hot coffee or maybe some sweet tea if you're in the South. I don't listen, I'm not judging what you're drinking. If I could put some Southern Comfort in my hot chocolate, I'd do it, but I don't put anything in my coffee. How about you? Put in how do you drink coffee? What's your favorite beverage to have when you're relaxing? Maybe it's a cold beer, you know, nice Boston lager. I don't know, but whatever your snack is tonight, I hope you're comfy. I hope you got a good seat. We're going to be visiting tonight with a real good friend of mine, and I've missed him terrible. He has uprooted his family and moved them clear across the state and got them a nice, comfy little digs now and settling in. And there's nothing nicer than a new family starting out. And, little Holden is just growing like a weed. And I think we're just past his 8 month anniversary. So I'll tell you what, he's going to be driving before we know it. So let's get his puppy in here. If he's ready, the old thumbs up. You ready? There he is. All right, ladies and gentlemen, author and many other things, some of which I will not name here, Mr. Steve Stockton.
Hey, hey,
Hello,
what's
hon.
going on? Hey, everybody.
How you doing? Boy, it's good to have you back. I thought about it all day today, and I was just like, man, coming off a hard week with the floral designing for Mother's Day. If you guys don't know, it's like Valentine's Day. You're doing 10, maybe 12-hour days. Some of these people, they were staying till 4 o'clock in the morning. I just would not do it. But it's such a stressful, chaotic thing. Listen, you're in a small place with a lot of women, lots of anxiety, chaos, and add the public into that and some sharp things, and you've got yourself a party for a week. So there you go. Steve, are you froze on me, honey? I think you froze. Let's go in and go back out again. I think you froze. Hit the button, baby. If you can hear me, go out and come back in. Nicole's husband, Holden's daddy. All right, go back out. All right, he's going out. He's going to come back in. So, hey, everybody in the chat, good to see you. I am so sorry I did not have a show last night. I was surprised with tickets to the theater to go see 1776. If you have never seen this play, they did a movie about it, fantastic, with the Broadway players, I believe, most of the cast, and it's absolutely fantastic. And it's based on the beginning of the Revolutionary War, but mostly about the birth of the Declaration of Independence, how it became as viewed via Congress. And so you've got, Sam Adams and John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, Ben Franklin, you name it, and all the delegates from all the different colonies. So the struggle to get that document put together, and at the same time what was going on, you find out what was going on in the war, basically, that was just really starting to rumble. It starts in about a year after Lexington and Concord, and what the Continental Army was going through with via letters from George Washington is very well done. I sent it to a couple of people I was talking to yesterday in Messenger. It is available on YouTube, free with ads, so you can watch it. Just put in 1776 and watch that movie. I'm telling you, watch it with the kids if you can. It's fantastic. So Steve has not popped back in yet. So let's talk to everybody here in the chat. Let's see who's here. Chris, I see you. Welcome in, sweetie. Oh, I did. It was wonderful because I had showed that to my boys. I think it was around one was around the third grade and one was in, it's homeschool, so it's hard to say because you might be in third grade level and some things in fifth or sixth grade and another. So that's the beauty of homeschooling. But it was around that time frame, and we watched that to introduce them into the whole revolution and the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution and all that stuff. And it was just really neat that, here we are all these years later. They take me to see this play, and sitting on either, I was bookended by sons. It couldn't have been better. Couldn't have been better. So thank you so much for allowing me last night. I appreciate it. I don't know what happened to Steve. Let me send his invite again. Give me just a second and we'll talk to chat just in case he's having a problem with that link. And I will be right back with you. Talk amongst yourselves, because I can't have a Steve Stockton Q&A without Steve. I think everybody's having technical difficulties right now. It's been crazy. Let me send this to him again, just in case he needs it. Okay, I think that'll do it. All right, so let me find you guys again. Try not to hit the wrong buttons, and we'll be all right. Yeah, right? Oh my gosh, Chris, it was I mean, I laughed, I cried, I tried not to jump out of my chair and dance, but I couldn't help it. A couple times I yelled at stuff. I remember at one point in time during the play, I was like, "You tell him, John." I couldn't help it. I'm like, "I'm sorry, I have, you know, Revolutionary War Tourette's or whatever you wanna call it." But I was so excited. It's such a powerful, fun, play, and sitting next to one of my sons was a guy who had never seen the movie or the play and had been a history teacher for 35 years, and his friend had brought him to the play, and we talked a little before it started, and I told him, I said, "You're absolutely gonna love this." And I looked over multiple times, and he's just tears streaming down his face. 35 years, isn't that wonderful? I know. What about ooh, oh, I tried to catch the mute, but I just sneezed. I'm so sorry, right into the microphone. I wasn't fast enough. Thank you, because I know you guys are gonna start saying "bless you" in a minute when the chat catches up. So thank you very much. Froze moments, Indy, good to see you. Hello, everybody on Rumble. Hello, everybody on Facebook, and everybody on the inner tubes over here on YouTube. I appreciate y'all being here. And I don't see Steve yet, so we're gonna just keep going. Hello, Vixen Doe. Good to see you. I hope you guys have some good questions tonight because I would love to do a Q&A for Uncommon. Good to have you. Hey, Lindsay. How's things over in Canada? I hope everything's going good. I really do. I think everything is easing up. Hey, Richard. Good to have you here. If I missed you or you're over on Rumble, looks like we're getting the chat coming through StreamYard, so that's good. Sometimes that doesn't work, so it looks like we're cooking. We've got Facebook chats and everything else coming through. That's great. Okay, so let's do this. Last week, hey Gerald, how you doing, sweetheart? Good to have you. So last week we were talking about, I think a little bit each time we talked about witnesses of the JFK assassination, and I was talking about how I kind of leaned on a lot of those, thinking if they were witnesses and they had something to say, and they told reporters back then, which would have been Penn Jones Jr., Mark Lane was going at the same time. We had Sylvia Mayer going at the same time, and multiple others. I mean, people during this time, they just packed up their um, kids. Some of them moved. The one lady, she had 3 kids and a dog. She was a single mom, just a local journalist, and packed up and moved, went to Dallas, and she just spent the next 20, 30 years trying to dig up information and things on stuff. What you got? Richard is my husband. I use his account. My name is Judy. Oh, hey, Judy. Hey, welcome in, Judy. It's so funny with all these icons and stuff, and the pseudonyms and things like that. You never know who you're talking to. So welcome in, Judy. I'm so glad you told me what you got going on, bros. I live a few miles away from Fort Wilderness location. They put an outdoor play on called Liberty every year. Anyone can be in it if you want. Oh gosh, that is fantastic. Isn't that fantastic? I would love to do that, just to put on plays, historical plays and things like that, doing just getting people interested in the history again, but based on facts, not the propaganda or the blown up stuff. Just tell the truth, good, bad, and indifferent and ugly, in between, all of that. Just tell the truth, because if you don't tell it by facts, how are we going to learn from it? You know what I mean? And I think that's one of the things that burns me up the most about the JFK murder and conspiracy fact. It's just not only that a lot of the things that went on then are still going on now, but it's important to dig up the actual facts so we can sort them and try to prevent it from happening, again. And once you start peeling back, you can kind of see the patterns and the playbook and the way they, in 63, they might have been dropping wallets. In 2001, 2011, 2000, whenever, they're dropping passports. I mean, ridiculous things that they still think that the public should listen to. You have this big burnout hole in Pennsylvania where a plane supposedly crashed. You've got the wrong parts in the hole, first of all. And then you've got these random things scattered around that don't quite fit. And then just on top of that, unscathed passports of the person. You know, we come on now. You know, it's like old LBJ talking to RFK Senior. Come on, Bobby. You know, come on, Bobby. Boy, LBJ was a piece of work, wasn't he? So things like that, like the witnesses that gave a testimony and may or may not have been interviewed by the Warren Commission, right? Which we know 26 volumes of hooey. And they just boldly changed their testimony. Well, they never knew it because they never saw it. They never read 26 volumes, to see their testimony. Or they read the testimony, said, that's not what I said. And nobody cared. Nobody paid it any mind, or they'd say it on the news and it never went anywhere, or they would talk to lawyers, it wouldn't go anywhere, or they just got, karate chopped to the throat, one of them, 5 times in the back with a bolt action rifle, suicided, sure, you know. So Penn Jones Jr. was the first one really to come out with bringing forth that information as far as witnesses that had, started disappearing. So when you look at that, Penn had a saying, and he told a few authors that are still active today, that once you find something in this, it's so big that if you find one aspect of the case and just really research that to just the ends of the earth. So a lot of people got that idea to take one thing and splinter off in this direction, splinter off in this one, and this one, and this one, and this one. And I think over 60 years, we had so many splinter offs, we forgot to come back and put them all together. And I think the only way I can do that for me, might be different for you, is to look at what the witnesses wanted to say and what they didn't want us to hear by taking them out. In the first, I want to say, maybe 6 to 8 years after, you really got a big hit of a lot of people disappearing and going missing and things like that, right? And then you had another one around 75. There was another, big amount of people that were taken out. And all of these people were about to testify again. So it dwindled down after that, but people were still being protected and, told to shut up and not say anything. I mean, not that long ago. I was listening to an author. I believe it's the author. Oh gosh, I forget his name, but he wrote Into the Nightmare, and he was given an interview, and he was talking about Officer Tippett's wife at the time in 63. Yeah, I think he had 3 or 4 kids. He talked to the wife, who was still alive up until, oh gosh, I want to say 15 years ago, maybe, and talked to his youngest son. And the youngest son was very enthusiastic to talk to this author about his father, Officer Tippett, who was also killed that day. A lot of people forget that, and the son wanted to talk to him again. They set up an appointment, and instead of him, he got an agent that showed up and said, no, there won't be any interview here with this. So what don't they want us to know about Officer Tippett? Why wouldn't they want us to talk to, wasn't this just a wife whose husband was a police officer and got killed, by supposedly Oswald right before he went to the theater? Even though he was at the theater 10, 15 minutes before Tippett actually was shot. Even they kept trying to change the times to make that fit. Hard to make it fit. Facts are facts. And the fact that the bullet casing didn't match up with the gun that they found Oswald with, little facts like that. And the facts that most of the witnesses saw 2 people there instead of 1. Odd things would happen to witnesses. I believe his name was Dennis Wilson, but I might be thinking of the Beach Boys. So don't go. There's so many witnesses just off the top of my head. I don't trust me in names, but let's just go with that for now. a young man. I think I have the testimony. I'll pull it up for you. But it was the young man who witnessed someone running away from the Officer Tippett shooting. The agencies that were interviewing this man kept asking him, "Is it Oswald? Is it Oswald? Was it Oswald?" And he couldn't do it. He couldn't say, "Yes, it was. Yes, it was." So he goes down into his basement. I forget where he was working. It might have been a used car salesman or somewhere along those lines, but he had a business. And he goes down into the basement to turn off all the lights, or into the utility room, one of the two, to turn off the lights. And he said, "I threw these first 2 or 3 switches, and then all of a sudden it was a man in the corner behind me, shot him in the head." And he said, I just saw somebody crouching down, and the next thing I know, I was shot. He got hit in the head, and the bullet went in, came out the other side, must have grazed, not the outside. It went in his head and came out the other side, but it missed. I don't know how this man's still walking around, but he recovered. Miracle of miracles. After he recovered from this head wound, he was then able to identify Oswald definitely as the shooter he saw running away from the Tippett shooting. So, I guess it jarred his memory. Isn't this crazy? What you got, Froze? It's amazing. The British colonists during the French Indian War went berserker. Yes, absolutely. I live a few miles away from Fort Wilderness. Okay, so this had to do with the Liberty the play? Pretty cool. All right, so if you guys have any questions about JFK or theories, I am starting to look into the paranormal, and I wanted to get Steve back for that, but it looks like he's having some kind of technical issues. Let me check and see if he sent me something. Let me see. Oh, goodness, his internet went down. Oh, my. Okay. Well, let us know if it comes back up. Doggone it. Maybe your phone? I'm asking if he wants to do his phone. We'll see what he says. All right, Rumble. Sorry about that. Hate to give you the side of my head there. All right. So we'll see what's happening with Steve. Till then, let me see if I can find that little screenshot. You guys come up with it. I know, Chris, right? And I don't know if there's a storm going on in Massachusetts right now. It might be. I don't know. We've had lots of storms on and off. We've got stuff we talk about. And again, I would love to hear your theory. So what I'm trying to do with this, again, with this series, is if you knew about the some people have basic knowledge of the JFK shooting, and they go, "Well, I just always thought Oswald did it by himself." Here's the deal. There is so much more evidence proving that he didn't even fire a shot, that this guy was literally set up. There was Buell Wesley Frazier was another one that I believe was involved in the agency. Ruth Payne and her husband Michael, I believe that they absolutely were, and they also had the cameras with the serial numbers, the little micro cameras that only the government had. So all of these little things, I believe, she probably wrote a lot of the letters on her typewriter. That here's one. So Oswald was supposedly staying in this boarding house not far from where his wife and 2 young kids were staying. The wife and 2 young kids were staying, as you saw in JFK, even though they changed Ruth Payne's name because Oliver Stone said he didn't want to get sued, was staying at Ruth Payne's house. Ruth Payne also owned a station wagon. Okay. And that was also seen at the scene at the conspiracy murder, whatever you want to call it, in Dealey Plaza. It was seen that day from another witness. We'll bring that up later on down the line. But she was the one that got Oswald the job. I think he was there about 6 weeks before the 22nd of November. I think it was about 6 weeks. So all of these people, interchangeable, all knowing each other back and forth, maybe not realizing what they're doing, go here, drop off this envelope, pick up this envelope, whatever. They think that they're doing something else when they're really there just to be there in case they need them. They think they're on this mission and they're just, and before you know it, you're getting framed for whatever comes next. You know what I mean? One of those people. So, expendable cowboys. They're all over the place. So, Buell Wesley Frazier was there. Buell Wesley Frazier was the only other person that was arrested and charged with the shooting of the president. They put him in this room and they interrogated him, and told him they were going to give him the electric chair and the whole thing until he changed his story. He was in the interrogation room, I don't know how long, not as long as Oswald. He was the first in there for 12 hours. I think they kept him about 8 or 9. Told him they were going to, charge him with the murder and everything else if he didn't say what they wanted him to say or whatever went on in that room. Because when he came out, he then said he was the one who gave Oswald the ride to work in the morning that he often did, and that this day he stayed oddly at Ruth Payne's house instead of the boarding house that Thursday night. And that morning he gave him a ride to the book depository, and I think Buell Wesley worked somewhere else on a different floor in a different department of that building. I'm not really sure. And said that Oswald showed up with a package wrapped in brown paper. And when he asked him what it was, he told him it was curtain rods. Even though neighbors and that saw him getting in the car, and I think Buell Wesley Frazier's mom or something else said that Oswald didn't have anything in his hands, maybe a sandwich in a brown bag, lunch kind of thing. All of this came out after the fact. And oddly enough, I don't know where this story came from, but the job before the Texas Book Depository, the job that Buell Wesley Frazier had, was in a store dealing with curtains and curtain rods. So now I ask you this. Many people sit there and argue about, okay, well, his Buell Wesley Frazier's sister backed up his story. Well, they lived together. And if you know that she backed it up, she also then recanted after the fact. The other neighbors, like I said, there was 2 across the street, and the mother both said he didn't have anything. So now you got 2 against 3. So how do you weigh these things? Who do you trust? Now you got to pick apart each person. Well, are they trustworthy? How did it, did their story change? You have to start doing that analysis of each individual thing to try to weigh out who's telling the truth here. If you back up from it, again, this is my opinion. If you back up from it, I'm asking myself, why the hell would Lee Harvey Oswald be taking curtain rods that supposedly Marina bought him because she's going to make him curtains for a room he is renting in a boarding house? It's not an apartment. It's not a little studio. This is a tiny room off of the living room of this small house that's usually decorated and set up the way the people have the boarding house. This is not a permanent situation here. And he was in there under a different name, I believe, too. It wasn't the Harvey Heidel. It was another one. I can't remember what it was. It was something like Henry Lee or something like that. It's a combination of 2 names. But isn't that odd? So I'm wondering, some 24-year-old gives a crap about these curtain rods, and he's going to have Marina buy. There's no material. There was no purchasing of material. There wasn't anything like that to back up this story. Just a stupid story about the curtain rods. And then they go back and forth with the paper from the book depository. It was the same paper. It wasn't the same paper. He made the paper, wrapped it up. Okay, well, supposedly Marina got him. So when did he have the curtain rods to take back to the book depository to use the wrapping paper that they used for the books? Stop mind screwing us, because they're just saying these things out like they're matter of fact, and they're saying them in this propaganda kind of cadence to you. And you can't let your mind shut down and go, well, what the hell would a 24-year-old be giving a crap about curtains in a boarding house? There's curtains or those pull-down shades or something. He had never mentioned it before, that the light was getting in his eyes or whatever it may be. He's going to decorate this other person's house that he's just temporarily renting under an assumed name for a short time, because whoever he was working for whether he was an FBI informant or a CIA throwaway cowboy, expendable cowboy, whatever that, may have been, or both. Do you really think he's giving a crap about curtains? So how did the curtain rods get at the depository for him to wrap them, bring them from wherever he was to get the paper from the depository to the house, and then have to transport them from Marina's house to his house again? It makes no sense. But this is the kind of crap people are trying to feed you and get you to buy it. I don't know if you guys have ever heard that story before, but think about it. All right, let's see what you're saying here. I still don't see Steve, and I sent him to him again. I told him he could call in on his phone if he just wants to chit chat. Yep, so new TV shows coming out. The FBI, the CIA, like you're supposed to see them as good guys, as if, right? Well, see, that's it. And if you guys knew how much of Hollywood, radio, magazines, books, podcasts, if it's in the media, trust me, they're in it. The tentacles go deep and wide. Yep. Oh, absolutely. Froze. Absolutely. So let's look at a clip. Again, I don't know if you knew about that, about Buell Wesley Frazier. I don't know if he's passed yet. I think he may be. He's written a couple books. He goes to, the cons, whatever you call them, the paracons, or what would you call it? A conspiracy con. A con. Like a can. But yep, Mockingbird, octopus, amen, froze. So he's an interesting character. The Payne's very interesting, but once you dig into these people and you start thinking, come on, they're definitely involved in some shenanigans, you know what I mean? Some spy shit, because everything points to that. I mean, it's absolutely nuts when you start unpacking this. Another interesting aspect of this whole thing is the whole thing about Russia, him defecting to Russia, how he was treated as he was defecting to Russia, how long he stayed in Russia, and the things that happened there, and what he was doing. When he came back with Marina, he just walked through, no debriefing, no, being held back, and like what happened to a normal person. He just came back in with his wife. There's also thoughts out there that Marina was part of her own little kind of KGB kind of run thing, because a lot of these Russian girls would marry them up to the American would come back, then they would start fights and act like there was a lot of abuse and they just couldn't live with them anymore, and they would always be this like kind of domestic abuse escalation kind of thing. They wind up getting a divorce, and now they're free to roam in America and work for whoever they are working for. And that was another thing. So you've got Oswald mixed up in all the things he was mixed up in, and now this kind of dummy defector kind of thing to slide people in there to get secrets out of Russia and Soviet Union. And it would be on the ground kind of stuff these guys would be trying to get, like all the weird things, like how do you get on a bus, how much, where do you go to buy, your regular groceries, how are they paid for, what are the, how do you, is there cabs, how do you catch a cab, how do you do this, how do you do that? And they would write all that down and bring the information back. And that's, just ground recon kind of stuff. But who knows, some of them might have been in stuff even heavier. But the point is, there was a group that was decoy or dummy defectors that they would send into other countries to try to get information. And when you look at it, you kind of think, that's not such a hard stretch. I'm sure both sides were doing that and still are. But if you know that Oswald was part of that and how he's being used back and forth, you can kind of see how he could be used for other things. And then when you realize there's probably hundreds of them, you doing multiple different things all at the same time, all being moved with a handler. Then you look at the handler and you look, who were they handling? And did the people they were handling, the small group, might have been 6 to 10, who knows how many they were in charge of. And then, the pyramid grows from there. because there's a lot of stories in the JFK saga that you'll hear where this person was like a cowboy, right? And their handler introduced him to another. So you will hear stories like that from people like James Files, who claims that when he got to Dallas, he claims that he was the one at the grassy knoll that shot just one of the people behind the fence at the grassy knoll that day. I don't know. I've lost count. 6, 7, 8 were back there, and none of them saw each other. But only one's telling the truth. Which one is it? Or is any of them? Here's my thing. If you're still alive today telling me that you were in on that and you were a hitman and you shot the president of the United States and you're still alive, I'm going to tend to believe that it probably wasn't you. I'm not saying they're not. I'm just saying I'm going to tend to believe on this side. How are you still alive? You see what I mean? Because, guys who saw puffs of smoke are gone. And that's the whole reason a lot of times that gets turned down, because if you listen to what Christian David said, who was a hitman in France, they came to him and they asked him, and when he found out who it was, he went, no, because you'll just kill me. And I wanted to make a correction. I had been constantly saying executive decision as the movie in 1975. I am so wrong about that. It's executive action, and it was 1976, I believe. That is also available on YouTube for free. I would watch it because it gets the dance down, if you know what I mean. I'm not going to say it's factual by names or anything else, but it surely does capture the dance, the whole waltzes thing, and the feel of it, and quite informative in that direction. And if you lay that on top of JFK and you start realizing how big and how much this goes out and how many people were involved all at the same time, like I keep saying, tapestry, the threads, then you start going, wow, of course. But that's a very good movie, executive action. I believe Burt Lancaster is in it, Will Geer, bunch of other ones you recognize, but it goes over the whole thing of how this one team is going to go in very militaristic, and they're practicing out in the desert and with cars moving and all this, and they're practicing the shot, and they're all getting envelopes of money, and it's just all very covert and everything else. I believe it was very much like that, but not exactly, because again, when they're telling you this one faction did it, I want to know how they changed their route 2 days before. Who made that phone call? If that was the person, how did they get in? How did they set that up? Who had the power? Who had the ability to change those things and to rule those things? Who got the head of the FBI to call up just hours later and give a full description of Oswald and say, that's your guy, and knew about him? Who had the power to do that? Not just the FBI. Okay, did the FBI get the military to stand down that day, and the police, the sheriff's, the Dallas Police Department and the sheriff's department to stand down and not be on the roof of buildings, not keeping the windows closed, not getting people off the triple overpass? Who had that power for the stand down orders? Who took the bubble top off? Because for years, what their pattern is to blame the dead guy. Kennedy told us to take it off. Kennedy told the Secret Service not to ride on the car. Get those idiots off the car and blah, blah, blah. Kennedy's the one that moved the motorcade back. I mean, the motorcycles back because, it's too loud. I can't hear myself talk. Let me tell you something. Kennedy never said any of this. This is just what they would do. Because once one person would pass from the Secret Service or whatever, they'd start blaming him. It's just what they do. It's a pattern, like the passports and the wallets and things like that. It's a pattern. Once you know the pattern, the picture's easy to see. I got a little bit of information. A little surprise thing I'm going to throw down here too, because when you realize how far back this was planned, there is documents from early September that have to do with Oswald and others that showed that this was all being set up. And I believe it was probably even further on because you think about Miami. The Miami attempt was just 4 days before Dallas, and they almost got away with it there. And the Chicago one was just weeks, and that one got shut down, the attempt there. And that was supposedly had Cuban connections. Does that mean Castro did it? No, because everybody's got hitmen that are good. You got them all, in every country's got somebody, right? And certain ones are good at keeping quiet, don't ask questions, very professional. I'm not buying all these people that said this was a professional military. I do believe they were involved, factions of them, of course. Of course, generals had to be involved in this. Of course. Of course. Who was in the autopsy room telling the doctors to stop doing what they were doing, move on to the next thing, get them out of here? Who was that? It was all military. It was Bombs Away LeMay, General LeMay, and several others, including admirals, in that room, smoking cigars while they're working on Kennedy. The way Kennedy was treated in this, it turns your stomach. Have you heard the things that the Dallas police were saying? Oh, it wasn't no more than one of those getting shot in the street, hanging from a tree. We didn't look no different. Let me tell you something. Everybody is telling me that back then, 2/3 of that police department were involved in some very bad. Let's just say they wear sheets on their head, pillowcases. Very, very bad, deep. I mean, a lot of it was back then. You're talking 63. There was a lot going on. You had the whole George Wallace thing. You had the Martin Luther King was coming out. You had all things going on at the same time. But to say that about a president of the United States, this man was just trying to stop wars, trying to get things organized and get people to stop lying to him after the Ellen Dulles lied to him about the Bay of Pigs. That was it. CIA lied to me. People got killed. You know, Kennedy, excuse me, Kennedy not very long, early before his assassination, told another country, I believe it was, I don't want to say it was the Congo. I don't want to say it could have been, that unfortunately he was not in control of certain aspects of the American government, that there were certain factions of the government that he was not in control of, and one of them was the CIA. And then right after that, that's when he got rid of Dulles, and then the other two either got fired or resigned, depending on who you listen to. And bing, bang, boom. They never quit. They just moved over and kept going right on with what they were doing. It's really awful. So can you imagine being a president of the United States and having to tell another country that? Hey, Val, how you doing? Good to see you, hon. All right, let's see what you got here. Shouldn't have been there, as Cisco said. Johnson had those votes tied up. Yes, absolutely. Kennedy didn't even want to be. That's true. That's true. After what the FBI, Leonard Pelletier, Wounded Knee and Standing Rock, they can whistle in the wind. I ain't hearing it. Amen. Well, do you know he got pardoned, right? He got out. He went with the last pardons from the old Biden administration. I think Biden was out for that. I really think he might have even been like in a different realm somewhere. And whoever had that automatic pen was just selling pardons like left and right. What's your bid? What's your bid? Okay, we'll give you that. That's just my theory. I can't prove it, but man, it makes sense, doesn't it? Because some of the people that were getting pardons on that were incredible. And when Leonard Pelletier got it, I went, okay, they're selling pardons. They got to be. And I know that's an awful thing. Again, allegedly, just my opinion. Think about it, you know? Oh my gosh, hand over fist, right? Making money, money, money. Oh my gosh, so awful. So let me see. Which one do you want to see first? There's a couple that I wanted to show you tonight. because I didn't get a chance to show them before. Excuse me. And I really think they're all important. Hey, he's back. Oh my goodness. Okay, hold on 1 minute. Let me get him back up here. Hi,
Hey,
sweetie, you back?
sorry about that. Yeah, for the time being, looks like the internet went out in the whole area, but
Okay.
appears to
All
be
right. Well,
back
good to
now.
have you back. I wanted to ask you while I got you, what are your thoughts so far? Because you kind of came into this cold, and I'm looking into the paranormal aspects of this, and it seems like an awful lot going on around you. So I'm going to send you some of that. So if you hear anything, let me know.
Yeah,
But because I was going through where, if there was any hauntings connected to Kennedy or LBJ or, any of them. And I listed off a bunch of them, and then a bunch of different buildings and places to try to see if there was anything connected one way or the other. And of course, I put in Hyannis Port and Martha's Vineyard and things like that. But as far as that goes, I wanted to know what you thought going in here, because you and I talked a little bit about it.
hey,
And
Vixen Doe.
I know that you know that this was all one great big conspiracy, but what has stuck out in your lifetime about the JFK shooting? Was it a certain author or book or a piece of information or a fact that just stuck out and made you go, whom, and it's like,
It was really that Mars stuff that we covered that opened my eyes about it way back in the day.
right. It's so good. I mean, it was so good. So that would have been, 89, 90-ish, or maybe a
Yeah.
little earlier, 88,
I mean, I
you
always
know.
thought something didn't jibe with it, but he pretty much. Then there were some other things along the way, some other things that gave me ideas, but that
Yeah.
pretty much Mars was the the de facto
Crossfire.
standard on this. Yeah,
Oh yeah, Crossfire, and to think that he was 22, he was a college student, but he was right there in Dallas, and he
yeah.
was also kind of like a cub reporter. He was learning how to, working in, so he was in there asking and seeing things just going on
And
real
he was
early.
in a lot of the places. So there's a picture of
Uh-huh.
him dancing with a go-go dancer in Jack Ruby's carousel
Right,
as a
right,
college student. So
yeah,
he moved in some of the same circles.
he
Hey,
did.
Chris.
So he got to hear a lot of the stuff on that end. And I think that's amazing, and so did Penn Jones. That's what we were talking about last week.
Mhm.
And I thought that was so neat to where kind of Penn never dropped it. He just couldn't do it anymore. I mean, imagine he was there every year doing a visual. It's so much so that that's what started the sixth floor depository museum, because school book depository museum, because they had to do something to counteract what Penn Jones was saying. At the same time, you've got oh gosh, what's his name? Robert Groden down there with his table. He had gotten, what he did was he printed a little book himself. Hey, Mayhem, welcome in. And the umbrella guy, yep, the umbrella guy, that was all Signal, I believe. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. That's great that you brought that up. But, you know, uh, Groden he would just have a little table, and he would be down there like in the park across the street from the school book depository, right in Dealey Plaza, and you didn't have to have a vendor license or anything like that. They would hit them with all these things, like from being on private property to selling private property to not having a permit when a permit didn't exist. They hit him 84 times, arrested him, hit him with tickets to get him to shut up because he was just telling the truth. And he's the man with the dark beard, the young guy. He was, I think, 18, 19 when he started, and he's in that whole series of The Men Who Shot Kennedy, and he's still going today, and he is more or less a specialist on the films. There's a Pruder film as well as others, and it might surprise you to know that he's got on his website, you can go see them all, about 112 films, I think he said, that actually came from that day that have been suppressed, that was held back, from different news cameras and things like that. There's they actually brought that up in the congressional, whatever you want to call that, hearing they had lately with Oliver Stone and Jim DiEugenio and Jefferson Morley, I believe. And it's amazing to hear that much film exists, and now you're starting to see a lot of the films come out, because for years, Steve, all we had was those 3 or 4 little pops of film or pictures of Kennedy. So now a lot of it's coming out, and a lot of things are being answered, and little blanks being filled in. I think it's very interesting, but I agree totally with Steve that once Jim came out with Crossfire, I kind of stopped and went backwards to see, okay, what are the early people saying? And last week I played a little bit of Penn Jones, but I had told Steve about this. Like, you want to talk about supernatural? And I'm gonna see if I could pull this up. I think I got it. But because I started thinking about this as people are trying to make a crazy quilt, make their patch fit and grabbing patterns that match and making this crazy quilt, and this square will argue with that square way over there and say, we're all part of the same quilt, but we don't match. We're just kind of hacked in there together, and my piece can't exist if your piece exists. Where I look at it differently, like threads in a tapestry that draw a picture, and every thread is important. And I think we need to stop throwing them away, because that's what happens in this. If you say big oil did it and everybody focuses there, okay, now answer these questions. There's nobody in big oil that could have got that route changed. There's nobody that could have in big oil that could have made the whole Dallas Police Department stand down, that could have made the military and the National Guard stand down, not be on the buildings and things like this. So all the little things that happen, you really need more people involved. When we focus on one thing, it's easy to trick us. When we say all of it could be true at the same time, the mob could have been involved, this one could have been involved, that one, it makes a little more sense. And I really believe they did that, Steve, as a mass confusion thing. I mean, what do they care if they got hitmen up on one building from some country that somebody hired, and they got two more a set over here too? Nobody's gonna care. They'll let them party, let them hit, right?
Yep, yep, I agree. There were several different factors or whatever vying to take him out, and it didn't matter who got it done, or maybe they didn't even know, one
Right.
another. There was linkage blindness there, but either
Yeah.
way, somebody succeeded, or maybe several
Well, that's the
somebodies.
thing. That's the thing, and that's why they had David Ferry saying, I don't know if he originally said it, but he said it in the JFK movie, that is an enigma wrapped in a, this and that and everything else. It's just a puzzle that even the hitmen don't know who called them. And of course, that's how it's done. So once you look at all that, I think the big picture really shows you that those factions that
Yeah.
structured that, made that happen, are still, a lot of them still going on
Yeah, and
today.
then the mob stuff. There's a famous type of mob hit where several mob guys will shoot a guy, and then that way it takes forever for them to prove which gun and which bullet actually killed the person.
So
So
true.
again, just colluding the facts there, occluding the facts.
Absolutely true. Absolutely
So
true. Even in the old French firing squads, they did that. That's
yeah,
where that whole thing comes from. It's like only one or two people would have live rounds, you know.
hmm
But that was more of, they said that was more for moral problems, so they wouldn't know who killed the person, so they could deal with it mentally. But in this case, it was, shoot if you, fire at will. That was basically the way it was going down there.
yeah,
Um, I've got this one. Is this it? Do 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 do. Take me just a second. We've got so many different little short clips here of, okay, this is the part where I told Steve that when I did Lon Chaney Sr., and I think I told you a little bit about this last episode, but I just want to reiterate that I felt like he was here. He was here with me all week. I could feel him looking over my shoulder and laughing. I mean, a couple times I thought I smelled him. It's a different, in a different vibe. Sometimes when I really get into a character researching, that energy will connect in so much that sometimes I think they come back and say, "What are you doing? I heard my name," that kind of thing. But
hmm
I in this, I felt Penn so much. Um, and I wanted to show you a couple clips of him, but I had not remembered Penn from, I know I heard him as a teenager. I remember hearing the name. I didn't know that much about him. I may have heard an interview. I don't know. But to best of my knowledge, I don't remember hearing this phrase. And when I did, it about floored me because I just heard it last week. Let's get a little bit of Penn here. I think I stopped it in the right spot. He also predicted Ruby would not make it out of that jail alive, and quite a few other things. But this man deserves to be remembered. Here we go. Little bit of Penn Jones. Listen to what he says.
cut out of some of the television.
That's true. It was cut out, but certainly there's no
It has
doubt
been
that
replayed
he's
once since then. I believe Since then, I believe a number of researchers have made
Well, it's in the
audio.
notes of Thayer Waldo
Yes.
and Seth Cantor
Seth Cantor
and
was
Waldo
the
too.
Scripps Howard reporter.
Yes.
Now, he maintains that he saw Ruby at Parkland Hospital shortly after the assassination. The commission discounts his testimony, even though there was a corroborating witness. It seems to me that there are strong arguments for his being there. That he saw Jack Ruby is what I'm saying.
Yes, I feel certain that Ruby was at the hospital. Wilma Tice saw him, and I was at the hospital, and I took pictures. Although I was almost in a complete state of shock, I was snapping pictures of just the area outside of the hospital, and I feel quite positive that I have a picture of Jack Ruby leaving Parkland Hospital. Every newsman in the Dallas area who has looked at that picture claims they also feel that it is Jack Ruby, but unfortunately, it is a picture from the rear as Ruby is leaving the hospital.
Well, there's another photographer by the name of Willis in Dallas who has some photographs. The Willis sequence is published in one of the supporting volumes of exhibits in the 26 volumes. And in one of those, it's alleged that a person resembling Ruby is present outside the depository within a very short time after the assassination. Do you believe that to be true? I believe the picture's been cropped.
Yes, the main reason that I believe it's probably true is because the Warren Commission did crop it before they included it in their report. And that's another criticism that I have of the Warren Commission, is that they would permit mutilation of evidence this way.
This is what I wanted to get to, Mr. Jones. This question of whether the Warren Commission merely did an inadequate job in the mind of critics, whether some critics can justifiably go farther and say there was a professional deformation of evidence. I was reading through some of the volumes just the other day with reference to some material pieces of evidence. Frazier, I believe his name is, one of the FBI firearms experts, has this testimony. I want to quote it to you, and I have some questions to address to you after I've read it. He's speaking of some of Governor Connolly's clothing. This is on page 65 of volume 5. He says, "I found in the cuff of the shirt, which is a French cuff, through both the outer and inner layers of the cuff, a hole which is ragged in contour, irregularly shaped, and which had more or less star-shaped tears extending outward from the hole into the material, located 1.5 inches up from the end of the sleeve and 5.5 inches from the outside cufflink hole, though both, as I said, through both layers of the cuff, and the hole was in such a condition possibly due to the washing of the material that I could not determine what actually caused it, or if it had been caused by a bullet, the direction of the path of the bullet with reference to entrance and exit." Now, it seems to me what he's saying there that Governor, that some material evidence in the case has been laundered. Why and by whom?
I think that is destruction of evidence. And I not only did they permit the mutilation of evidence by cropping of pictures and by tearing of the Zapruder frames and gluing them back together, but they didn't even raise their eyebrows. Not a question was asked.
Has the commission replied to this at all? Have they made any?
To my knowledge, they have not. They have not. But this business, in World War I, they could project the angle from which the long-range artillery shells were coming into France by the scars on the walls. And I believe that if the clothing of Governor Connolly had not been cleaned and pressed and laundered, that we would have been able to tell a little bit about the angle of the bullet that hit Governor Connolly. And the commission didn't even bother to ask a single question about why the governor's clothing was cleaned and pressed.
Where is the clothing now?
I think it's in the state of Texas archives, but as far as its value I don't know
value as evidence,
but it certainly has no more value as evidence because of the cleaning and pressing that it got.
The next question that I want to ask is, where do we go from here in terms of the case? I was reading in the New York Times yesterday, the September 25th issue. There's an article on the editorial page by Tom Wicker, and he's speaking of a public discussion group in New York, which recently held a roundtable session about the Warren Commission report and its conclusion. And he points out that the major difficulty for the group was finding anyone of stature who was willing to defend the Warren report and its findings. And he makes a review of the evidence, and he feels that there should be a new investigation, or he's quoting people who feel that there should be a new investigation. You've proposed such an investigation,
Yes.
and you've described the kind of investigation it should be. Would you?
Yes. Well, of course, my book is a compilation of a series of articles which appeared in my newspaper. And in the beginning, I felt like that we should reopen the Warren Commission. But the further I got into this, I do not think that reopening of the Warren Commission is the answer. I would like now very much to see a congressional investigation, something similar to the congressional investigation after the Roberts Commission on the Pearl Harbor
Yes.
incident. But I don't know. I hope that Congress will do it. I'm critical of the president because initially Congress started steps toward an investigation of the assassination of
Well,
president.
they initiated
Initially,
steps
it
for an
was-
investigation prior to
yes.
the president's appointing a blue ribbon commission.
And then the
Warren.
president appointed this blue ribbon commission, which really isn't a blue ribbon commission at all, except in name. These were the names of great Americans on this commission. But in my opinion, in the eyes of history, the Warren Commission report will completely ruin Earl Warren in the
Yep.
eyes of history.
It
You
did.
know, when the ship is sunk or the battle is lost, the captain has to take the blame. And Chairman Earl Warren will have to take the blame for this thing, in my opinion, in the eyes of history. I really feel it would have been better if President Johnson, coming to the presidency as he did, should have just stepped aside and said, okay, I will let Congress, you go ahead and investigate this thing. And if you need any power or any resources from me, it's available to you.
We've been talking to Penn Judge.
Of those actions, we must proceed by assuming that he is at this time sane and should pay some attention to the things that he has to say.
I want to ask you, what do you feel is Ruby's fate? What lies ahead for him? Do you see an eventual release for him, a long imprisonment, or what?
No. I have already made the prediction in print that he will be killed, not legally executed. I think that he's going.
Sorry about that, guys. I didn't realize I was muted. What I was saying was, this is the part I wanted to take you back to, the part that I heard. That I'm now wondering, did I ever hear this on the radio as a kid and it just stuck in my subconscious? I don't know. Maybe that's why I got the basis for looking at this whole case the way I do, like a tapestry. But I wanted you to hear Penn say it, because when I heard it, it felt like a supernatural moment to me. So let me try to catch this one little part here.
Going to be murdered. not in Dallas. They've had enough killings in Dallas, but I think that someday he's going to be adjudged insane and will be moved out to one of the state insane asylums in some little town where he probably will meet his fate at the hands of maybe an enraged inmate. I don't. This is certainly speculation, but that's the way I think.
He was right.
I think the man knows too much. I think he was very small in the conspiracy to kill the president. I look at this conspiracy to kill the president as compared with a giant mosaic made up of thousands of threads. And I think that both Ruby and Oswald were very little men and maybe had only one thread to put in place in this mosaic. But I think that they were watched. They were carefully watched to see that they put that thread in place at the time it was supposed to be put in place.
Amen, Penn.
I think Oswald told the truth on Friday night at 7:55 when he almost screamed to a bunch of reporters, "I'm just a patsy."
There you go. There you go. I mean, that blew me away. He said mosaic, I said tapestry, but we're both talking about threads and how the threads are so important. And again, I think that's where everybody's gone wrong in 60 years of throwing this out. My thread is the one that, is part of the picture, not yours. I say leave all the daggum threads in there. And once we get a look at the picture, we'll pull out the ones we don't need. Leave them all in there. Cuba, if you've got a fact and it is past the test of time, or it's weighing a little heavier on this one, but it's so hard because nobody really wants to take the time to say, okay, well, you've got two witnesses that said that they saw Oswald running away from the Tippit scene. Hold on a minute. Now you got to take those witnesses. Why are they saying that? Did they always say that? Well, I told you about one of them. He didn't say that till after he got shot in the head. And once he recovered about 3-4 months later, they asked him again. And he's, oh yeah, that was Oswald. I mean, he learned his lesson. Now, how are you going to weigh his testimony? You're going to believe what he said in the beginning? Okay. And then you've got, all the other ones that they used for the Warren report, like Helen Markham. I'll show you hers. Oh my gosh. She was, Mary Lincoln level, little nutty, and her story changed, as years went on. So again, it seems to me that the people I don't trust are saying everybody that doesn't agree with the Warren Commission report is batshit crazy. And you need to listen to us. And this is what happened, even though we're telling you this incredibly insane stuff, like this one magic bullet doing all these twists and turns and hanging in midair and changing direction and going into Connolly, even though I can look at the film and I can see Kennedy from the untouched film, because there's a lot of touch-ups out there. I can see Kennedy grabbing at his throat, and I can see Connolly holding his hat in his hand that he got shot in. He would not be able to hold that hat if that same bullet just went through his wrist. He wouldn't be able to hold the hat. So you're telling me things that don't make any sense. You're telling me that Greer, the driver, the Secret Service guy, the oldest Secret Service guy there, turned around and shot Kennedy in the head when both of his hands are still on the steering wheel. Did he have a third hand? Or was it like Jim Mars said, and it was the grease reflecting on his hair? Is it possible? Have we seen it from another angle? Did the people standing on the ground see him do that? They were 10, 12 feet away, looking right at that car. Did anybody see Greer turn around on the ground and shoot the president in the head? No. Can I tell you why Bill Cooper, who I love, who I listened to on the radio, I read his books and watched his series on Behold the Pale Horse. He had a lot of wonderful things to say, and he gave his life to say it. But how did that film fool him? I don't know. I can't speak for Bill Cooper. I can speak for what I saw. So does that mean that you stop believing anything that went on here? No, you get back on the horse and you keep looking. And if you're not sure about something, you stick a pin in it and you try to weigh it out. Like the one witness. He said it wasn't Oswald, the guy who shot Tippit, that he saw running away. And then he got shot in the head, had a good 4 months to think about it. Now he clearly remembers it was Oswald. And the Warren Commission put him in. All right, we got our guy. Anybody else who disputed that was either shut up or scared to death or disappeared. Seriously, that's what happened. It was that kind of deep, and it kept going and kept going. At the time of Penn Jones, he would tell you in his interviews, all right, we lost 17. And in that interview from 6 months, 9 months later, we've got 69. Add 5 more years. Now we're up to 137. And then they say, well, we don't have any witnesses coming forward saying that. So what you're saying isn't true. Well, you killed them all. Good night, Judy. It's not good. I'm sorry, sweetheart. Sometimes you have to go out and you have to refresh and come back. Now, I don't know if I'm still glitchy. You guys let me know if I'm glitchy on YouTube. I did all that with the modem, unplugged everything and reset everything. So I'm hoping I'm not glitchy all over the place. Hey, D-Rock, good to see you, sweetheart. So I don't know if you guys have any questions on that so far. I thought that was amazing the way Penn Jones explained that. And I'm like, no wonder I sink in with his thinking and what he was doing. And man, this guy went through a lot too. I mean, everybody in this really put themselves up, for ridicule and, families getting ruined and everything else. So, I just feel like we owe it to them to just listen to what they had to say. And, of course, your mileage may vary. You might be thinking there's something else. But I think the big story here is, like I said in the first 2 episodes, with the new files coming out and people telling you that it's a nothing burger and there's nothing there. They don't know what they're looking at. I don't know what they expected to see, but if they expected a file dump where it's going to say, Joe Blow called this person on this date and said, you know what, do it. And we're going to hire this person to do it. And we're going to put them here, here, and here. You're not going to see that document. These documents have been held for 60 years. And if there was anything like that, which I doubt there was, that's gone. You have to pick through the pieces. You have to look through what's going on. Was there, conversations had? Was there anything in there that tells you, okay, we're thinking that this group may be doing these kinds of operations? Did they do them in other places just like this? Yes, they did. That was in the file dump. So that just gives more strength to the conspiracy, which is basically not an ugly word, guys. It's an ugly thing for 2 people to get together and agree to do a crime. Of course, it's an ugly thing. That's what a conspiracy is. Was there a conspiracy in the JFK assassination? You better believe there was. The biggest mother of them all. What's disgusting is they did it right in front of everybody, and then they lied to you in front of your face, and people believed it because they told it over and over and over again. How many people here know that there was a baby, an infant, that was injured by a gunshot on Dealey Plaza that was in the hospital, Parkland Hospital, at the same time President Kennedy was? The witness we listened to last week, Teague, he was standing under the triple overpass in the middle column, I believe, in the middle arch, and he got hit from a ricochet bullet off of the curb, hit him in the cheek, right? And he was bleeding. There was a street sign that got hit with a bullet that was changed out in under an hour in Dealey Plaza. In under an hour. So do you blame the workers? Who made the phone call to tell the dispatch, whoever, to call the local city, whoever has street signs, that street sign need to be changed? Don't say anything. Did the guys who put that street sign up, did they get killed that night? How long did they live after that? How about the guys that cut the piece out of the curb that the night before had gotten rubbed over, so it wasn't the bullet nick wasn't even in that curb anymore, and they made a big deal out of cutting it out. We showed it 2 weeks ago. Them cutting it out and taking it to investigate it after they ruined the evidence. That's why I let you listen to Penn Jones talking about how they took Governor's now was an FBI agent went in and collected it. I know this from another story, and I have no reason to doubt it, that an FBI agent went into the hospital, collected the clothes from Governor Connolly, and took them directly to a dry cleaner, because that's what you do with evidence in a crime scene when a president has been shot. Complete insanity. Complete insanity. All right. So what are they saying? Excuse me. They don't want you to hear. When if you were with me when we watched JFK, you saw a segment within that movie of Jim Garrison during his trial, the Attorney General of New Orleans, who decided that they were going to throw the first punch in the Kennedy investigation and put up Clay Shaw as a conspirator, at least part of the conspiracy to kill Kennedy, and tried to hook him up with Ruby and all that, which, and Oswald and everybody else. So if you saw the movie, you remember. And in there was a segment where Garrison went on a night show, and they treated him real ugly and wouldn't let him show the pictures and made fun of him and things like that. That was the Johnny Carson show, guys. And I have that clip, the one that they wouldn't show you in the movie. And this is what went down.
Was to make sure that there were no conflicts contained within them. The agents were ordered to resolve the conflicts, prepare new reports, and to destroy the old one. Another example.
What does all of that mean?
It means whatever you choose to have it mean. Again, if you ask me...
But if somebody's saying something, did that actually happen, or... I mean, you said that Mark Lane said that a man told him, but did it actually happen?
If you fly down to New Orleans, I can show you these people talking, but you just invited one person up here. I'm telling you what they said. Each time I tell you, you say, is that a fact? All I can say is that it appears to me to be a fact. If you want to reject it, you can. But let me show you some pictures, and if you want to reject these, go ahead. In the 26 volumes...
You're not on trial, Jim. I'm just asking. As really,
Yeah, but I'm afraid another advertisement may be coming up.
You're right about that, too.
In the 26 volumes, there is no reference to any serious sort of arrest. There are a couple of references to short dialogues, and then the indication is that the man wasn't of any value or any importance at all. Actually, at Dealey Plaza, there were 10 men arrested, and this has been kept secret for more than 4 years. Here are the pictures of 5 of them being arrested, and they've never been shown before.
Well, I don't know
Several of these men arrested have been connected by our office with a Central Intelligence Agency of the United States government. The probability is that this is why Officer Tippit was killed. Is this speculation? Positively, and I want to identify it as that. But the probability appears to be that the killing of Tippit was the diversion which allowed them to turn loose these 10 men. Here's some more. And here's another.
It won't show, Jim.
But why aren't they mentioned? Why aren't they mentioned? They're not mentioned
but you say speculation and the probabilities.
No,
which I don't understand. Who's suppressing all of this information? On whose order?
I'll tell you who's suppressing it. The federal government is suppressing it.
Who in the federal government?
The administration of your government is suppressing it because they know that the Central Intelligence Agency...
On whose order?
On the order of the President of the United States. Who do you think issued... Let me finish now.
I didn't say a thing.
Before the advertisement. The executive order, which forbids every person in this audience and every person listening to this program, which forbids them to look at this evidence until September in the year 2039, was issued by the President of the United States. Does that answer your question? He's suppressing it.
For what possible reason?
Why don't you ask him, John?
You got to love it.
I think he would say because, first of all, Mr. Garrison has come up with no credible evidence to support any of his theories.
Well, let me reply to that I am not allowed as an attorney to come up with evidence until the case comes. Why don't they just let me fall on my face?
Are you willing to say tonight, when your trial comes up, that you'll secure a conviction without the shadow of a doubt?
I cannot make a statement which would reflect on Mr. Shaw. Since the day we charged him and arrested him, I have not made a statement which inferred that he's guilty, and I cannot infer that now. But I am trying to tell you that there is no question as a result of our investigation that an element of the Central Intelligence Agency of our country killed John Kennedy, and that the present administration is concealing the facts. There is no question about it at all.
That is your opinion.
No, it is not. I know it, and if you will just wait, you will see that history will support this as fact.
Buddy. Escaping from the worries of cooking for your family is easy when there is a holiday in nearby.
Well, thank goodness for that, Mr. Carson. I mean, just awful. I mean, they would tell him that the pictures weren't going to show up on the camera. They would keep telling him that he doesn't have any credible evidence, but they wouldn't let him show the evidence because he was in an active indictment on Clay Shaw, and they just absolutely ruined his reputation. They just tore him down, and Jim just kept going. So again, I honor everybody that did that. The Jim Mars, I've got some of the early women that were on it too, that just bulldogs on this. Penn Jones Jr., again, bulldog his entire life. Robert Groden, he's still going. He's still going. He was the man I told you that they kept hitting him with indictments because he would go sit out in Dealey Plaza and tell people the truth and give them pamphlets and stuff with the truth in it. He's also the one that worked very hard on getting the Zapruder films and the other films out there. Like I said, he's still going today, and he's doing great. You can still get a copy of his book. He said, he still has copies in print, but he's not doing another one. So if you could ever get that hold of that book, grab it. And that's Robert Groden. And I'll show you more about him before we're done with the series. But people like that. And he stated on a show, I believe it was Untold American Stories, to Mark Grobert and Eric Hunley, I believe it was that show, where he said, the reason I keep going, he said that he went to visit the gravesite of Kennedy, and he said he kind of did a silent contract with him that he would keep going as long as he had power in his body until we found the answer of who did this. And here, 60 some odd years later, he's still going. And, it's sad to think that we can't take people like that and put everybody in a room, that each of the specialists like Vince Palomara, who won't go as far as saying he thinks who did it, but he says that he knows that 3 Secret Service men, that if the way they were acting, Greer was one of them, that they were definitely in on it, without a doubt, because how they were acting. Emery was another, telling the other Secret Service men to get off the limo. And I don't know if you've seen the film yet, where you see them in Love Field and they're telling them to get off the limo, and the Secret Service guys, what do you mean? What are you doing? And they actually got 2 Secret Service men that were supposed to be on the side of that limo, got left at Love Field. They went and had lunch until they heard the president had been shot. So none of this stuff is supposed to go down. Don't believe any of that Kennedy said, take the bubble top off. It never happened. And there have been Secret Service men like Kinney, who was there that day. A lot of people love Cliff Hill. I think Cliff Hill knew I don't think he knew it was coming. He wasn't supposed to be there. He was Jackie's Secret Service guy. She requested him to be there. But I think he knew the truth and just never really gave it up, like a lot of them, like maybe the physician, the president's official physician, Berkeley. He keeps calling researchers, up until the point where he died, and like wanted to tell, but then at the last minute would back out. So, people like that want to get it off their chest. And then you've got these people like Chauncey Holt. And I'm going to bring him into it probably the next episode because I really want to do a Tippett Oswald Ruby episode and then kind of be done. We're going to do the paranormal stuff after if I can find some. And I found a couple little ones, but so far anyway. But the thing is these people who dedicate their whole lives to researching this Jim Mars, so many. There's people that bounce in and write a book. And I've said this before, you have to keep this in mind. If a new book comes out on the JFK assassination, it has to have a new angle. It has to have something new in it, a new discovery or something like that. So people will just like make that up out of whole cloth to get it in there. Hey Henry, how you doing, sweetie? To just to get the book published. Some are requested to be written by certain agencies to really throw things off because again we're still doing that. Take all that in consideration. How I do it is like I said in the beginning of this episode. If I'm looking at the witness and the witness wanted to speak their mind and then the witness disappeared or got that underlines and italicizes everything they said for me because why didn't they want me to hear what he had to say? Right? People like Garrison that were in the limelight or Jim Mars or Penn Jones or anybody else that was saying the opposite, they just either were discredited and blackballed and said to be crazy and just had their lives ruined, and that's another tactic. So there you go. All right, the next one, how much time do we have? We have a little bit of time. Okay, let's see the next one. This one, okay, this is the second half of Sam Holland, who was a railroad supervisor. And I don't know Sam Holland's fate off the top of my head. I think they left him alone. I'm not 100% sure. But you can tell this is a no-nonsense man, comes home, wants his sliced tomatoes and his, his sweet tea or whatever it is. And, just likes things structured and did things right because it was the right thing to do. And I believe every word he said. Let's see what you think. Your mileage may vary, but here we go. I think that
Mr. Holland, did you remain behind here for a while when the police officers were searching the area?
Approximately 15 minutes before I had to go back to my office. There was about 40 or 50 people around here searching.
And what did you find here?
A lot of footprints behind this car, mud on the bumpers. And I looked around to see if I could find some empty shells or any evidence of a shot being fired. And
I want you to remember this for the episode that's coming up next. Where he's standing, look at the fence, okay? Look at the rail on the top of the fence, the run rail, okay? And what did he just say? Excuse me. It rained that morning. Nobody else had an umbrella, so I forget who brought in the umbrella man, but that was definitely a signal. It was a pump up and pump down. We need another shot. He's not dead yet. Bam. And there comes the rest, the repeat. I believe probably about 6 or 7 shots all at one time. Remember I showed you the 21 gun salute? If they all shoot at the same time, you hear one shot. Keep that in mind. But I want you to keep in mind, too, that he just said it was muddy. He saw footprints and mud on bumpers. Almost like, now this is speculation because there's a gap in what he said there, but if you had mud on your boots, would you rub it on a bumper or a curb or something like that to get the mud off your boots? Hold that thought and remember it for next week because I think it's important for what I'm going to bring up.
bullet shell rejected from the gun. And this is where I saw the smoke from the third shot.
Right drifting out around here?
Just drifting out underneath these trees.
And when that shot hit the president, as he passed by this lamppost, did you see the effect of the shot upon the president?
Well, it knocked him over to his left down in the car.
Away from here?
Away from here.
About where was he in relation? Where was the car, the presidential limousine, in relation to the lamppost?
Just a little to the left of that lamppost we're looking at.
In effect, Mr. Holland, the Warren Commission published just a very small portion of your testimony and used your testimony as proof that no shots could have come from behind the fence. Did they accurately and fairly use your testimony?
They are wrong, because my testimony, and I made it very clear, that there was a fourth shot fired, and one of those shots came from behind that picket fence. And there's no doubt in my mind, and never will be, because I was on the spot. I saw the smoke, heard the report, and saw the smoke from behind that fence. And I don't see how that they could doubt there was a fourth shot fired.
The vast majority of the witnesses who expressed an opinion as to the origin of the shots agreed with Mr. Holland that the shot did come from behind the fence. These witnesses, as this picture shows, were positioned throughout Dealey Plaza. The commission concluded that no credible evidence suggests that the shots were fired from any place other than the Texas School Book Depository building. Mr. Holland, you were on the overpass. You were probably in the best position of any witness on November 22nd. In your view, did the Warren Commission present all of the facts regarding the assassination of President Kennedy?
Well, let me say this. The Warren Commission, I think, had to report in their book what they wanted the world to believe when they read the Warren Commission. As you know, as well as I know, that everybody in the world was reading this Warren Commission, and it had to read like they wanted it to read. They had to prove that Oswald did it alone.
The commission also stated, as you know, Mr. Holland, that the same bullet which hit Governor Connally first struck President Kennedy. Based upon what you observed from that position just above the street on the overpass, is that possible?
No, that Warren Commission is in error on that, because I was an eyewitness to that, and I know that the same bullet that hit President Kennedy did not hit Governor Connally. The first bullet, the president slumped over, and Governor Connally made his turn to the right and then back to the left. And that's when the second shot was fired and knocked him down in the floorboard. And it would have been impossible for him to turn had the bullet hit, the same bullet hit him that went through the president's neck.
And did you see the effect of the next bullet which struck President Kennedy?
I saw the effects of the next bullet that struck the president. Because it flipped him over almost on his stomach and the side of his head, and his head was laying on the edge of the seat. He was laying more on his stomach, and his foot was hanging out over the car, edge of the car, upside down.
After we go to opportunity and you look at
Exactly. Exactly. There's so much when I see that. Mr. Sam Holland knew exactly what he saw. Nobody was going to tell him different. He knew. He was with a group of people that saw. I think it was 3 or before, possibly. If you remember a couple episodes back, I showed him in his interview with in The Men Who Killed Kennedy. And here he was talking to Mark Lane. Mark Lane is another who gave his entire life from the age of, well, not entire life, that was hyperbole, excuse me. I'm trying not to speculate, exaggerate, make up anything. I'm trying to give you straight facts here. Mark Lane spent the major part of his life studying this and trying to get the truth. He jumped right in before Oswald. I believe he was involved right before Oswald got shot or right after. And he said that Oswald needed an attorney. I know he was trying to fight to get Oswald an attorney posthumously. So he was continuing that after the death. And then his mother, Oswald's mother, Martha, I think that's her name. Forgive me, Martha or Margaret. I'm not sure which. We'll get the right facts. But anyway, she told him that she wanted to be the lawyer to clear her son's name because she knew she wasn't even sure who they had in the coffin. She was questioning that because of scars and things that were wrong, to the point of they dug him up. So Mark Lane, yeah, I think he passed in 2011 maybe, and he was still going. So again, the people that dedicate their lives to look for this truth, and I look at this man sitting on his couch, and again, I look at him and I see a man that goes to work. He in the morning probably never called out a sick a day in his life. One of these guys, and proud of it, proud to have that because it was the right thing to do, and it was going above and beyond. Doing his job, did the right thing, checked the door, see if it was locked twice because it was his responsibility. You could kind of pick this up on this guy. Now I'm making all this up off the top of my head, but I'm just telling you as far as character. This is what I'm picking up off this guy, right? And he knows what he saw. And he's being so careful in the choice of his words. Probably, high school graduate down there, Dallas, probably, from that area. I don't know. And, his whole life is probably structured on repetition and security of the knowledge of everything in its place and where it needs to be and what time it needs to be. So this is a man who comes home and he's probably married to somebody who's got dinner on table at 6:00. It's always on table at 6:00, probably with homemade biscuits and sliced tomatoes and sweet tea, like I said. And he's probably a very soft-spoken man, the guy to sit down there at the counter at the Kretschke's or the whatever those were called, the Woolworths department store, whatever, on those little stools. And sit next to his buddies teasing him about, you didn't see that. They got a lot of smart people up there in Washington sitting in an office wearing suits and ties with all kinds of credentials and bona fides and telling you that it was something completely different. You're out of your mind. You don't know what you saw. Maybe you need to get new glasses, Sam. What's your wife think about all this nonsense? Do you say this kind of nonsense in front of her? You just imagine the kind of ribbon that he took. And his only anchor, his only lifeline to his own sanity. And I know I'm dramatizing this, but am I wrong? I mean, think about it. Think about it. And the only lifeline he's got to his sanity is knowing damn well what he saw and nobody was going to change him. And he's still so careful in his words and his choice of vocabulary when he's saying, the Warren Report, such a gentleman, the Warren Report is an error there because I know that I saw, you see how he's doing? And I know Connolly couldn't have been shot with that same bullet because here we, Now, at this point in time, imagine if you will, he's sitting on this couch talking to Mark Lane. This is, I want to say somewhere in the ballpark of 66, 68, this was happening. This interview was given, I would believe. I forget when the movie came out, so forgive me on the date, but it was very close to the actual event, right? So it's still fresh in his mind. He's had a couple of years of taking all that ribbon down at the Kretschke's, at the coffee counter, right? From the boys down at the shop, right? And he still knows what he saw. And now he's got somebody in a suit with a camera coming in his own living room with his wife's doilies lovingly placed on the back of that settee. That only company comes, where you're sitting on that couch because everything else goes down to the kitchen table. You know the kind of people I'm talking about. Good old American, salt of the earth people. And now he's got somebody listening to him with a camera. And he's going to tell it. And he told it. And he picked his words careful. And he stuck to what he saw. And then he took him on a little tour, showed him what he did, showed him how he went behind that fence and saw mud and footprints in the mud from early rain that morning. It cleared up by the time the motorcade, well before the motorcade started. I think before they got off the plane in Love Field, tell you the truth, it wasn't raining then. Right? Remember Jackie getting off the plane, giving her the roses. She's wearing the pink outfit, the whole shebang, right? So it wasn't raining. And this guy says he saw mud scraped on a bumper. Now, I got a little tidbit for you on that one. And it gave me chills. It set me to thinking real deep on it because I'm telling you, I don't know if I'm being hoodwinked here and that happens in this case all the time. It's inevitable. You're going to look at a piece of evidence. You're going to go, okay, where does this fit? How does it weigh? Is it credible? When did it first pop up into this? Who was the first people talking about it? Did it come out of a book? Did somebody say it in an interview? Somebody lie on the stand? And it's hard, folks. This isn't for the weak. This isn't for this definitely isn't for people who don't want to get neck deep in a puzzle. Okay. So there he is sitting on the couch and he's telling it. He's telling you how what he saw happened to Kennedy, his president. Love him or hate him, was his president. He was there. Maybe it was just at work, some ruckus going on. I don't really care, but I happen to be there and it's going by. I'm going to look at it. I don't know what he felt about President Kennedy. What I'm getting off of this man is right and wrong. Morals. It is what it is. And I'm going to tell it. And he's telling you detail about how Kennedy's poor unexpected body was reacting to these blows. He was telling you details of the reflexes of how the body reacted and fell over and then flipped on his stomach to where almost on his stomach where his head was, how his foot was hanging out the car. Would it blow your mind if I told you that this man would not see evidence in the public for another 10 years, 10 to 12, depending on when that interview was? Because the first time the Zapruder film was ever seen in public was on Goodnight America with Geraldo Rivera and his Al Capone empty vault. Well, there was something in the vault that night. Because Robert Groden brought that tape. The same man I told you about that got 84 indictments for trying to sell his magazine on in a public park at Dealey Plaza. It might make you feel good to know that he sued him back over decades of harassment. And I think the final settlement was something around $43,000, which barely covered his legal bills over 30-something years. But he got something. And he's about like this man sitting on his couch with his wife's doilies and on the back of the couch and telling the truth. But he would not see evidence. I hope he got to see it. I can't tell you that he did. He might have passed. I don't know. They might have took him out. I don't know much about how this gentleman left this mortal coil. But I can tell you, if he was watching Geraldo that night, he felt his Carhartt wrapped butt came right off of that damn settee. I can guarantee it. Because it was the first time that film was shown and everything he had been telling all those years was absolutely true. The body's reaction to the blows. And it backed him up. And I hope he lived to see it. But doesn't that give you chills to think about that? to tell a story and then be validated 10, 15 years later. And I don't even know, like I said, I don't even know if he got to see it, but maybe if he had kids and grandkids, maybe they saw it and said, you know what, grandpa or daddy was right. He'd been telling the truth all those years. How about that? Well, you and I know that there's a real good chance that he saw it from the other side. And he knows. And he knows how irrelevant it would be to be believed here on this earth because of all the things that are going on here and the low vibration we are. I mean, I don't think he would be as worried over there about all this. But that man handled his witness statement and the way he went about it, I think, with dignity and conviction. And I really like him. You know what I mean? Yeah, chills, right, Chris? I mean, blows your mind to think about that. All these people. And I can tell you right now, not a lot of people live to see it because we know the hit list. What are you saying, sweetheart? Hey, Woo. What you saying? Have you seen the TV miniseries 1122? Yes, I have. On who? Yes. Yep. And I can tell you something about that, Woo. I liked it. I liked it because I was going in knowing it was going to be an e-ticket ride. We used to say back in the day with the Disney e-tickets, the Haunted Mansion and big things like Terror Tower and stuff would be an e-ticket. So that's dating myself. But yes, and I can tell you that right around the time it was released, I was talking to Jim Mars on the phone. I really was. I called into the Jimmy, what's his name show. I don't listen to him anymore. He went a little batshit crazy. But anyway, I was talking to Jim, and we were talking about Project Northwoods. And we were talking about the Joint Chiefs of Staff and how all the generals had signed off of all these like wild things that they were going to do just to get Cuba into a war, to be able to say that, hey, we're going to go stop Cuba's ass because they did this. Again, same playbook, doing the same stuff. I'm just pointing at it, So we were talking about Project Northwoods and how Kennedy had said, we don't do that. Like, what are you, crazy? We're not going to take a plane load of American citizens and blow it up and blame it on Cuba just so we can start a war with them. That was actually one of the things they signed off on. The Joint Chiefs of Staff were perfectly fine with that. Well, why don't we take one full of people and run it into a building? Sound familiar? All of it, you can read it for yourself. It's all there. It's all documented. Blow your mind. Perfectly fine with it. So, doing something like this is really such a big stretch. What's amazing is the cover-up was even more complex than the actual planning of the assassination. And to think they had it planned multiple other times. They had plenty of places they could start off, but Dallas was prime. Why? Because it was the connections. I could see New Orleans. Sure. Mob connections. Sure. You know why? They killed a bunch of them in 1975 because they were going to testify. They didn't have anything to say. What'd you kill them for? What did they have to say that you didn't want us to hear? I know I'm crazy about this, man, because I'm pissed. First of all, does anybody deserve that? Nobody deserves that. Nobody deserves to get hit by a stray bullet. Kids get hit all the time. These innocent kids that are in these cities or some wild accident or domestic dispute. My heart breaks for every single person. And I can't tell you that I was a fan or not a fan. The things I know about Kennedy, I liked. I don't care he was stupid. His dad taught him that. I know how he was raised. I know the things that were going down in that family. Father had one of his daughters lobotomized because she was too happy and carefree. Didn't fit into the mold. This documented. Go research it for yourself. Don't believe me. Go research for yourself. You could take any point on this and go in any direction you want to go. And it all comes back. Just, if you're going to go out there, just remember to come back. You'll be all right. And understand they're all threads. And one thing isn't mutually exclusive from the other. The Cubans and the French and the mafia and the oil men and the CIA, the FBI. You know what I mean? Dulles brothers, all of them. Yes, LBJ, all of it. Hoover, yes. Yes. And Jim Marsh said that for 30 years. So do many other people. What intrigues me is looking back at some of these early witness statements and seeing, did they ever get validated? Did they take them out? Were they able to come back years later? There's very few of those that get to come back years later. Marina's one of them. To watch her change from how they had her locked down. Marina is Oswald's wife that came from Russia, Soviet Union, whatever. And if you look at her as someone who quite possibly could have been in that group that I explained earlier, you get married to an American, you come over here and you start a little domestic whatever, and you get loose and then you go, spy for them, whatever. If you look at her like that, and you got to think she was part of that, or because she was pretty coy in the beginning. She pretended she didn't speak any English and all this other stuff, and then her English got real good, and just it's all kind of stuff. They had put her in a hotel room and locked her down under guard immediately and worked on her continuously. So you've got a group of these suits in there telling her, he did this right, he bought that rifle right, you took those pictures right, and just broke her. And then years later, you look at her in her latest interviews. She's I don't want to accuse her of playing, but come on. She's doing it like, well, I start looking at all this evidence and I start thinking that maybe Lee was set up and who was I married to was, maybe he was being used. Maybe he was a patsy, that kind of, she didn't use that language, but you feel the vibe. Okay. So, who knows, right? But all you really know is if the Warren Report told you it probably didn't happen. They've been caught in so many different things, from the autopsy stuff to the changing the photographs, literally just changing the photographs, losing the brain, possibly changing the brain, 2 autopsies, 2 different coffins. And again, I want to say this before we go on to, there's a lot of big creators, people that are much better at producing their shows than I am. And, all this other stuff. There's a lot of great shows out there. I'm just me. And this is my opinion. And this is my research over decades and listening to some really smart people, Vince Palomara, Mark Lane. I keep naming them and I keep adding more because there's so many good ones. But there's so many bad ones too. And some of them I don't think mean to be, but they're locked in this thing. All their doors in their hallway of the like we started out talking about, this long hallway with all these doors. I'm opening all the doors. I want to know what's behind them. And then I'm going to weigh it and I'm going to put it on the scales. And that's how I'm picking. How did this person get this information? Where did it come from? What's the chain of custody on that information? Did it come from a sour, fruit from a poison tree kind of thing? Did somebody make it up and put it in a headline in an old newspaper and somebody ran with it? Because it's no different than looking at the Villisca Axe murder or a haunting or the Amityville haunting or any of these other things. We have to do it that way. But when I look at that man get shot in the head, sitting next to his wife in her perfect little, I don't even know what it was. Was it Armani? Pink suit? Horrific. This woman crawled on the back of the vehicle to grab a piece of her husband's skull, held it in her hand as she cradled his head in her lap as it poured blood. On the way to Parkland Hospital, Secret Service agents yelled at her. Emery, what's his face, yelled at her and told her, get off of him. They take him to the Parkland, whisk him away, and right away she starts getting shoved into positions to, wait here, sit here, go here, stand there, call him, do this. Right up into the point where she's told to stand next to LBJ as he nonsensically insists on being sworn in on Air Force One, moves all his stuff over from Air Force 2 to Air Force One, starts taking over the ship, telling all the Secret Service agents what to do. All this other stuff's going on. And then he's calling Bobby and teasing him. Even makes time to call the attorney general, whose brother's head just got blown off in front of God and everybody, and ask him for a copy of the oath so he could be sworn in on Air Force One, knowing he was already president. It's unnecessary to be sworn in as a VP after the president is dead. And asked Jackie to stand next to him, and then turned around and winked at his friend, pulling it off. Do you know the whole time he had a copy of that damn oath in his inside jacket pocket before he ever made the call to Bobby? This is what kind of person LBJ was. Now listen, if he's got relatives and he's got people, come at me in the chat, whatever you want to do. I'm going to tell you, the man was awful. And there's multiple things that prove that. And I think what really underlines it and proves it is the 9th episode, The Men Who Killed Kennedy, The Dirty Men, or whatever it's called. I forget what it's called. The episode that got banned. And Lady Bird Johnson bought up the rights and the copyrights and got the copies and pulled them off the shelves and everything else. That underlines it for me. Because when it's defamation of character and it's slander, and you start a lawsuit, and you sue them for that, everything comes out in discovery during the court case. So if somebody says something about you that's untrue, sue them. But it's not slander if it's true. They didn't do that. That kind of tells you. It's just like when a witness is killed, that underlines everything they had to say. For me, this is my opinion. All right, one more and we're out of here. One more really quick one. This is really something, man. You know, it just keeps going. It keeps. Oh, and I forgot to tell you, we lost Steve again with his power. He's told me he's fine. He unplugged everything, plugged it back in. He can't get it to come on. We'll continue next Monday with this. You guys really didn't have a lot of questions. You're learning so well with all this. And again, this is just my opinion based on my research, based on a lot of good research from a lot of decent people that I've evaluated over decades. Take that for what it's worth. You know, I hope it has sparked your interest in this and also your interest to look at what is happening now that matches with this. Because I'm telling you, if you take Butler, PA and lay it up against this, you'll see a lot of similarities. That should send chills up your spine. Knowing that they told CNN never showed a live, in any term that President Trump ever did, never showed a live rally. Pieces, parts, afterthoughts, whatever, clips. But a live rally, never. That was the only day they were going to run him live. And they told their photographer. And again, you can go research this. Use your high-speed film. We want good shots. They wanted you to see that day, now, what they saw in 63. And it really is scary how many parallels there are. All right, real quick one here. This is another man. I think it's Leon. Is it Leon? Yeah. Yeah, I think it's Leon. Okay, let's try this one. This is Leon Simmons. He's another railroad worker. And again, he matches with the other guy. I don't know if they were together. They possibly were, but they worked in the same area. And let's hear what he has to say. But they didn't want you to hear it.
We are in Mesquite, Texas, in the home of James Leon Simmons, a car inspector for the Union Terminal Railroad. Mr. Simmons, how long have you been employed by the Union Terminal?
I've been employed by the Union Terminal 11 years.
Were you a witness to the assassination of President Kennedy?
Yes, I was standing on the Elm Street overpass at the time of the assassination.
Were you there alone or with others?
There was a group of employees from the Union Terminal. at the time and 2 Dallas policemen.
What did you see and what did you hear?
As the presidential limousine was rounding the curve on Elm Street, there was a loud explosion. At the time, I didn't know what it was, but it sounded like a loud firecracker or a gunshot. And it sounded like it came from the left and in front of us, towards the wooden fence. And there was a puff of smoke that came underneath the trees on the embankment.
Where was the puff of smoke, Mr. Simmons, in relation to the wooden fence?
It was right directly in front of the wooden fence.
I show you a picture published by the Warren Commission as Commission Exhibit number 2215, which is a view of the Triple Underpass area. I ask you if you'd be good enough to mark with this pen with an X the area where you thought the shots came from, where you saw the smoke.
It was this area here.
After you heard the shot, saw the smoke, what did you do?
I was talking with a patrolman Foster at the time, and as soon as we heard the shots, we ran around to the wooden fence. And when we got there, there was no one there, but there was footprints in the mud around the fence, and there was footprints on the wooden 2x4 railing on the fence.
Were you questioned by the Dallas police on that day?
Yes, I was.
Did you give your name to the Dallas police?
Yes, I did.
Did you tell them what you've just told me?
Yes, I did.
Were you subsequently questioned by agents of the Federal Bureau of Investigation?
About a month later, I was questioned by the FBI.
Did you tell them what you told me and what you told the Dallas police?
Yes, I did.
Were you ever called as a witness by the Warren Commission?
No, sir, I wasn't.
This is the Warren Commission report. Back of it has an index of every person who is referred to by the commission. Is your name present there?
No, sir, it isn't.
You think it's rather curious that you had such a fine view of the whole Dealey Plaza area, and you were among those who saw smoke coming from evidently behind the fence, and yet you were not called by the commission as a witness?
Well, I always thought it peculiar, but I thought that's the way they did business.
It is, honey. That's exactly the way they do business, love. Okay, so before we let you guys get out of here, and thanks for being here tonight. I appreciate every single one of the viewers on YouTube, on Rumble. I love you all so much. Here's a little Pooh Bear dancing for you. I'm still working with getting all the chat together to where I can have it. Got this new setup. That's working pretty good. I hope the glitchy stuff has stopped because I just want to get it out there as clear as I can for you. But here's the deal. I wanted to finish up. Wu asked me about the 11/22/63, the Stephen King series. And when I was talking, took one of my hard lefts. When I was talking to Jim Mars and talking about Northwoods and all that, he was talking about that series coming out and how upset it made him, because now the young people that would see that would just get it in their mind that it was a single shooter, Lee Harvey Oswald again. And it was reiterated. So was that something that an agency had somebody do to reiterate that facade again, that whole theory, that whole thought of Oswald being the single shooter, when now we can look back with evidence of, things like LBJ's, basically his fixer, being the only unidentified fingerprint up there on a box on the 6th floor where Oswald, the sniper's nest, if that's what you want to call it. Do I think that he was a shooter? Do I think he was there that day? I don't know. How long do fingerprints last on a cardboard box? Had to be recent. He could have been there the day before casing the joint, setting up things, setting up other people. I'm not saying that he was a shooter, but I'm saying his fingerprint was there. unless he's got one of those thriller chiller hands that goes off and does evil deeds while the guy's asleep and then comes back and nobody knows some Twilight Zone shit. His fingerprint was there on a box. He didn't work there. Who owned the building? Who owned the building? We talked about this last week. D.H. Byrd owned the building. Who was he friends with? On the 6th floor depository. He was really good friends with LBJ. They'd been in all kind of committees and panels together and businesses and money changing hands and everything else. This son of a bitch owned the building. What did he do with the window on the 6th floor? He took it out. Used to bring it out at dinner parties and show the guests around Thanksgiving dinner and pass it around. This is the window that Lee Harvey Oswald shot President Kennedy. Isn't that wonderful? Let's pop some champagne. These people are absolutely evil bastards. Right? You want to know how early? I keep telling you this thing was planned very early. Let me tell you this. Somebody in here asked about Greer. I think it was Wu. First of all, Greer, what do I know about Greer from research? Greer was the oldest Secret Service agent. There's a lot more on him, but just for time's sake here. I like the character of Vince Palomara. He has never said anything or done anything to make me think otherwise. He's definitely the expert on the Secret Service for JFK. Really like the man. He's written 7 books. Highly recommend his books, especially the last one that just came out because it's a compilation with extra new stuff that has come out. Believe it or not, stuff is still coming out. And he says that he had a conversation with Greer's son. I don't know what year it was, what decade, but he had a conversation with him. And during that conversation, and I will be paraphrasing here, but I'm close. He asked the son, there was a lot of people and a lot of mixed feelings around that time, on Kennedy. How did your family feel about Kennedy? And he tells the story where it got real quiet real quick. It was kind of like a dead silence. He was like, almost didn't know what to say. It's like, are you still there? Kind of thing. And he kind of said something like that. And he goes, oh, and he says, yeah, I'm here. Well, how did your family feel? You go, and he said the answer back was, well, Kennedy was a Catholic. My dad and I, our family is Protestants. They were Irish. Well, when you look back, you see that Greer was also an early member of, I forget what they call it, the Orange Team, the Orange Group, something like that, that was big into fighting against the Catholics, Protestants against the Catholics. We all know that that's been going on for very long in Dublin and the bombings and everything else. He was involved in all that. And here he is driving for Kennedy. He wasn't Kennedy's regular driver, though. He was a White House driver, but he wasn't Kennedy's regular driver. I wonder how he got there in that seat to be behind the wheel at Dallas. Let's look into that. This is a little piece of information, not very well known. But I also got this, and full credit of finding this little detail goes to the man I was just talking about, the author and the expert here on the Secret Service, Vince Palomara. When I heard this, I was like, there you go again. Thomas B. Shipman, his death. Who was Thomas B. Shipman? He was a special agent, United States Secret Service. And he died October 14th, 1963. That's what, good 10 days, 2 weeks, somewhere around 2.5 weeks right before the shooting. How did he die? Let's see. He had a fatal heart attack, supposedly, while in a presidential protective assignment at Camp David. Why is this not known? Why is this information not out there? My God, we lost a Secret Service agent to a heart attack at Camp David, right? This is in Maryland, awaiting President John F. Kennedy's return. Shipman was a White House garage chauffeur, served as the regular driver for JFK. Okay. Now, due to his death, William Bill Greer was put in his position to drive the limousine in Dallas on November 22nd. Now, Shipman's background, a little bit on him. He had a 13-year Secret Service career previously with the Metropolitan Police Department in D.C., and he was described as healthy, having passed a recent health check with flying colors, is what the document says. He also absolutely loved Kennedy and would have done anything to protect him that day. Now, his death 5 weeks before the JFK assassination is noted in some conspiracy circles, make it sound wrong, due to his role and timing, with speculation that it ensured the different driver Greer for Dallas. Did it? Your guess is as good as mine. But here's another little tidbit. Vince tells another story of how he called the family when he found this out, and he wondered why there was no funeral. Everything was kept quiet. It wasn't in the papers. When other Secret Service men passed, there was a celebration of their life or a ceremony for them from the White House. There was nothing for this man. That's one. Two, he had just passed a physical. He has a massive heart attack, dies in his sleep. I want to know who the doctor was on that, who was the ME, right? Don't you? Very suspicious. So Vince calls and gets a hold of the family. This is, much later after all of this, and the kids are, adults. And he asks the question, and he says, what went on there? Did he have heart problems? And he didn't know what kind of answer he was going to get back. Yes, he was this. He had a heart attack. Everything was, on the up and up. And we're the ones who kept it all quiet. And we're the ones who wanted to be private or something. He didn't know what he was going to hear. This is what he heard back. Our whole family was suspicious about this situation. Everything was wrong. All kinds of things happened after the fact where they were telling him to keep everything quiet. Tell me this wasn't planned. I got a bridge in Brooklyn to sell you. Conspiracy, damn Skippy is a conspiracy. And there's a lot more where that came from. I'm glad you've been here. I think this has been a really exciting series, but I'm definitely going to finish it to where I feel like I gave you everything I can. This is what I got so far. Maybe it'll give you some ammunition and some knowledge to where at least if you're interested in a certain part of it, you'll go look it up, test me, check me out. If I got something wrong next week, tell me and we'll talk about it. Because it might be that you got something from over here and that's a bad source and we'll talk about that. Or maybe it's a good source and my source was bad. But most of the time when I'm telling you that, this is what's going on and there's some iffy stuff about that, but you look into it, see what you think, or this and that. If you back up again, when that starts to happen, back up and look at the whole tapestry again. Pull on the threads you want, but make sure they stay in the picture. Don't let anybody tell you that, that was, it was the mob that did it. I'm going to give you a little tidbit that I'm thinking here on the theory I'm working on. I think Ruby was the one working for the mob. I think he was the bag man. I think he was in so many things. But I'm hearing more and more and more from credible witnesses that saw Ruby in almost every aspect of this. Now, if you think back to where messages were given via still like moneygrams, or not moneygrams, telegrams and telephones, and things like that. You're hearing all kinds of people like such ran in the store to use the phone. Such and such ran up here to use the phone. You're hearing that all through this because the communication was so ridiculous. What if the mob say, you're my eyes and ears. I want you everywhere. This is what's going to happen next. I want to know what went down at Parkland. He was seen at Parkland. He was seen at Dealey Plaza. He was seen. We'll get into Ruby. But I think he was the connection back to Marcello, to New Orleans, which brings in the whole Jim Garrison and the Clay Shaw and the David Ferry and the Fair Play for Cuba and Oswald being over there and making sure he's being seen, handing out pamphlets and using the address of this bill. It's the most insane case. I've never seen anything bigger and deeper. The JFK movie, as long and as inclusive as that was, didn't even touch on this other stuff, really. because it was from the eyes of Jim Garrison in New Orleans and what happened in the trial for Clay Shaw. And you could see Jim Garrison on the Tonight Show trying his best to get around what he could say and couldn't say with an active case, and trying to prove his point, and Johnny Carson treating him like he was batshit crazy. Oh, Jim, you can't do it. This is the Attorney General of New Orleans. And back then, before they were twerking on the beach and, busting through, trying to release Tren de Agua people and terrorists and shit, it had some distinction to it. Even though they were crooked, they tried to act like they weren't, and they tried to have some decorum in their criminality, Back then, an AG of New Orleans meant something. It held some weight. It had some bona fides to it. And Johnny Carson is treating him like some street thug off the corner. This was the attitude. And that was around when that happened. That probably went down in, God, was it 68? I think it was. Yeah, because Bobby Kennedy got shot right before the trial for Clay Shaw, so it was right in there. And this is how Johnny Carson's treating him on live TV. So there you go. You be the judge. Do your own research. We've got at least 2 more episodes to this, and the paranormal one, if I can find any more ghost stories. Right now, I'm coming up with ghost stories that are more like, I personally think that they're more like John Wilkes Booth being seen in the gift shop at Ford's Theater. It's like he's being talked about. He's being, his name is coming up and he shows up, kind of thing. That's kind of what I'm feeling. I'm not getting any real true haunting where it's like a continuous thing, but I'm still digging. We'll see what we can pull up. I mean, around all this, there's got to be something, right? I mean, all these poor people being offed because they saw something, the wrong place, wrong time. But don't be fooled by these shills. And please don't. Some of these big creators, probably out of no fault of their own, are falling on one thing and telling you that nothing is coming out of the JFK files. Don't let people belittle that to you. It's a big deal to have some of this come out, and it's really solidifying some of the other theories that really very serious people that have been in this for a long time are getting something out of it, much like our friend here on the set T that told his story, told exactly what he saw, and didn't get to see or even have the film come out in public for 15 more years. I think it's important. If we don't learn from history, we are doomed to repeat it. George Santayana. Truer words are never spoken. I love you all. If you want to help out with the show, I highly recommend you come on over here to Rumble. I am demonetized on YouTube. It is what it is. So we have the Rumble channel. If things get too deep, for the inner tubes, we pop over there to Rumble. I am still very much trying to figure out what the heck this movie thing is about. Why do we keep getting cut off? I'd like to try it again on Tuesday. If you want to stick with me and take the chance that it might get cut off halfway, they will not tell me why they're doing it. So I just have to guess and keep trying and see what sticks. So I don't give up easy, much like a lot of these people. So we're going to try it again on Tuesday. Maybe I'll show executive action or something like that. I'll see. It depends on my general mood. So I'm going to try it, but here's the deal. If you do not have my email, it is journeythroughthegate@gmail.com. Shoot me an email. Tell me you're in my chat. I'll put you in the thing. If we get cut off, I will send you the link that I'm using to show you the movie. So you don't get stuck not seeing the last half of the movie, which I just think is mean. Why would they do that? So I'm still working on it, but it's not me, I don't think, unless I'm doing something I'm not aware of. So other people are doing it. There's no reason why I can't be doing it. Also with Rumble, I need 9 more subscribers over there. And all that means is you go over and you hit the button for free that says, I'm going to follow this person. Not a subscriber, I'm going to follow. And that'll give me 9 more. And I will be able to get into another category. I think it's a creator or something like that. They call it on Rumble. And we're going to see if that helps with some things. And that'll be great for everybody. So thank you for sticking with me. Thank you for sticking with all the mistakes and the errors and things like that. But if I'm wrong about something, I try to come back and tell you guys. If you guys bring something up in chat, we'll look it up together. But this story needs to be told. It does need to be told now. It needs to be told to our grandkids and everybody else to say, this cannot happen again. We are not these people. This is not us. This is some elite, power hungry some bitches that thought that they could make choices for everybody else. And if you don't believe me that they had that mentality coming straight out of World War II, if you know what I mean, Operation Paperclip and multiple others brought many over here. But one of the biggest families that were involved in this came straight out of that world. Actual, let's just say they like to play Yahtzee. Rhymes with Yahtzees. And that would be the Dulles brothers. Look into that. Prove me wrong. I'm not saying you can't. I'm saying please do. If I'm wrong about that. But it's just the tactic and the cold psychopathic cadence of their deeds. And LBJ was one of these people, and so was Hoover. And when all of these people got together at Cliff Martin's the night before the assassination and sat around that table and laughed and smiled and calculated and high-fived each other about shooting that man in the head, I'm going to tell you right now, I don't care how many times he cheated on his wife. That's between them. That man carried his brother soldiers on his back, not to one island, but two, to save them because they couldn't swim with a broken back, which is why he was always in pain. And he tried to stop a war. And because they killed him, they then proceeded to kill multiple witnesses, multiple American soldiers to the tune of 58,000, not to mention countless Vietnamese. For what? For what? Brown and Root, that LBJ was involved in, the helicopters came Bell and Howell. He leaned over to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He says, I'll give you a damn war. And he crossed out what Kennedy wrote about stopping the war and bringing the boys home 1,000 before Christmas. And that stroke of a pen escalated the Vietnam War. Much money was made. Many tears were shed. Families were destroyed. This is what they do. We must not let them continue to do it. What happened today in our lives, all this peace they're throwing around, it's kind of nice. Let's keep them all safe. And keep yourself safe too. Thanks for being here. Like I said, we'll meet back here tomorrow night on Rumble only. And we'll see if we can watch a movie. If it gets cut off, email me. I'll send you the link that I'm using. I don't want them to cut off your entertainment. You can finish the movie. But we're going to try. We're going to keep trying till we figure it out. I love you all. Thank you, mods. Thank you for everybody, all my members over on Rumble. I thank you guys so much. You're keeping us floating. I thank you. And again, if you want to contribute to the show, you can do Rumble Rants over there, $1 or more. It goes right into the show. You can go to my TeePublic. It's tpublic.com/Cisco. You can get a mug, get a t-shirt, get whatever, get a hoodie. I've got a nice one. I got a real nice one of the upgraded ones with the zipper front. And man, it's thick and it's really nice and soft. So there's lots of different designs over there. I really like Sage Against the Machine and, just the logo and stuff like that. But it helps the show. And I appreciate you guys. And I thank you so much for letting me do some of this history stuff. It really means a lot to me. And I love you being here. And if it sparked interest in this and you do your own research, well, there you go. I love it. I absolutely love it. That's what we're here for. We're here for each other. Thank you guys. We're just seeking the truth. And I thank you for being here with me. All right, let's see if we've got something to take us out of here tonight. How about, I haven't seen Lisa tonight, but I'll tell you what, a lot of people like dancing their way out of here. So let's do a little of that. Little raise the vibes before we leave. Good night, everybody. Kick them shoes off, kick that blues away. Good night, everybody. I love you. Thank you so much for being here. Please hit the like on the way out, whether you're in the inner tubes or unrumbled. Hit the like. We need all the love we can get. Good night.